About 7 years ago, I made a documentary called Beautiful Young Minds, which was the story of a group of young boys, or teenage boys, on their way to the International Mathematical Olympiad, which is essentially a Olympics for maths. And teams of 6 young people from around the world, over 100 countries, are represented at this event. And it was an extraordinary experience, an extraordinary journey, and the characters that I met whilst making that film were quite wonderful and vivid. And I always felt that that world and some of the inspiration, I suppose, of some of that some of those characters gave me whilst I was making that documentary would translate very well into a feature film. The wonderful thing about film was obviously you have license to be completely creative. So you have the inspiration of the real life events and some of those people, but you are free to do with that as you wish, really, as long as it remains true to the subject and it has integrity and is believable. So that's what we did. You know, we started with a world, with a group of characters within that world, and we told that story. But we told that story in a creative way, in a way that we wouldn't have been able to in a documentary. The film covers a period of 10 years, roughly. Although we're in 2 sort of time periods in the main character's life. And it takes us to places in a way which we wouldn't be able to experience, or would be very difficult to experience in a documentary. Firstly, it takes us inside his mind, and then it also we're in situations which are incredibly intimate and situations that we wouldn't have been able to film if they had existed. It's a big shift and a big undertaking, and you know, from having and working in a very intimate, very small way with a very small crew, if I have a crew at all. Sometimes I often self-shoot films that I make, or it's a mixture of me shooting and working with a crew, but the crew is generally very small. And then going from that to an environment where you have sometimes 40 plus people on a crew, which is still a relatively small crew for a feature film, and all of the cast and the extras and the schedule and the structure is a very different way of working. But what I was perhaps most I shall say scared about, was working with the actors, because that's not something that I'd done before. But actually I found that incredibly rewarding, and something that I felt comfortable with quite quickly. I don't know if they felt comfortable with it, but they were very good people to work with. X plus Y is a story about a young boy who is on the autistic spectrum, who has a gift for maths, but he doesn't connect with the emotional side of his character. Not that he doesn't have one, but he just doesn't connect with it. He's locked that away. And it's the story of him on a journey to compete at the International Mathematical Olympiad, which is like the Olympics, where people compete for medals in mathematics. But along that way, he unlocks the emotional side and learns how to love, and also to grieve for the loss of his father. Nathan is a difficult role. He's a boy, he doesn't say much for a start. So I was looking for somebody who is able to convey an enormous amount without saying very much, and to be very expressive, and somebody who we are able to empathise with and care about, And Asa is wonderful at achieving that. And I saw him a number of times. We spoke about the role before I cast him. We also introduced Asa to Daniel, who is the young man who was in Beautiful Young Minds, my documentary, whose character is the loose inspiration for Nathan in X plus Y. So he met Daniel, and we talked a lot about what it meant to be Daniel and what was going on in Daniel's head, because Daniel also finds communication quite difficult. And so Asa understood that, and we went to a school that teaches kids who are on the autistic spectrum, and Asa met with some of the kids there. So he really kind of understood what it meant to be Nathan. Nathan, throughout the film, doesn't really emote. I mean, that's part of his journey is to unlock that those emotions that he does have. It's not that he doesn't have them, it's that he's shut them away, and that he had a very traumatic experience when he was a boy, and that he's locked them away because they're irrational, they don't make sense to him, and he prefers to deal with the rational world that does, the mathematical world. He understands that world, it makes sense. Whereas emotions, love, loss, grief, they're all irrational, they're too difficult. So he shuts those away. But through the course of the film, those emotions are unlocked, and at the end, Asa produced an incredible performance where it really comes out of him. And I don't know where he found it from, but I really admire him for achieving that. It's incredibly moving listening to Sally. Some of the scenes that we did, which are very powerful scenes, Sally is able to find a level of emotion which was something that I hadn't experienced other than in real life. And it's so real and sometimes so visceral that I couldn't listen to it. I had to call cut because it was so powerful. And it's like if you were listening to somebody in a room or in whatever situation in real life, and they were in so much pain, you would have to step in to stop that because it's our natural instinct to do that. And there were times Sally loses her husband, so Julie loses her husband Michael in the film, and at that moment the sounds that were coming out of her were just so raw that I had to cut the scene several times because it was too painful. She's not been able to connect with her son, and that's very painful for her. But she has, I suppose, become used to that and become used to that role and her life revolving around her son and not getting much thanks in return. And then when Nathan leaves to go to maths camp in Taipei, suddenly there's this void in her life. And as it happens, that void is soon filled by Humphreys, played by Rafe. And they form a connection because both of them, in some ways, their lives have revolved around Nathan. And again, when he's left, suddenly they're at a bit of a loose end. And in order to try and understand her son, Julie wants to learn more about mathematics or become better at maths because it's something that she never has really understood or never been very good at. And for that reason, her son has never really respected her because he only respects people who speak the same language as him, mathematics. Rafe, Sally, Eddie, Asa, all of the actors, because we were working in a way where I encouraged, I hope, a level of improvisation. We have a wonderful script by James Graham, but there was freedom to improvise around that. And if something didn't feel right, we'd change it. And if something felt good, we'd put that in, and whatever came out. And I think Rafe kind of almost set the bar with his level and quality of impro. And, he's very funny. Rafe is a very funny guy. He's funny in reality. He's funny when he's acting. And, there are times, and lots of the impro, there were times when I was cracking up behind the camera. And if that was happening then, I was thinking, well, I'm sure this will have the same effect on people watching. Eddie was on another shoot or something, and we were lucky to get him, but we got him when he came off the project, the previous project that he was on, and straight on to us. So Eddie didn't have any rehearsal time, but as it turns out, Eddie doesn't need any rehearsal time, because he is so good at firstly filling those shoes. I don't know that people would imagine Eddie knowing that the characters that he played in the past as a maths professor, but he inhabits that character. And the first day that he appeared on location in his khaki shorts and sandals and with his beard and specs and his clipboard, I knew that we were going to be okay. There's a very long monologue, if you like, that Eddie has on the coach on the way to the airport before the team travel to Taipei. And in the script, it was written as VO, as voiceover. And actually, I wanted the option of playing it all on Eddie, if we chose to do that in the edit. Or at least that if we did use some of it as VO, that we would start it with his face in vision, and then we would use the rest of it as VO. But I wanted the sound to sound the same as what we were recording with him in vision, if you like. And so that was just before we shot the scene. I mentioned that to Eddie. Oh no, I know it says VO, but I want the whole thing. And Eddie went away for about 15 minutes, came back, got on the coach. We had about 20 minutes to shoot the scene before we had to wrap, and he absolutely nailed the scene, and word perfect, but not just word perfect, but with such vigor and joy and excitement and enthusiasm and a little bit of aggression. And we had the coach load of the crew, but also the actors, all the kids who were playing the team members, and it was a masterclass for everybody. There's not that many British Chinese actresses of that age, and especially not many who speak Mandarin. And so we cast the net wide, and we went to China, or we involved a casting director in China, and I got sent lots and lots of tapes of young Chinese actresses playing the role of Zhang Mei. And you see dozens and dozens and dozens, and then this one young woman stood out. And it's a bit of a punt, because she's in Beijing and we're over here, and so we flew her over and paired her up with Asa and got them in a room together, and it was great. I hope the film has a broader appeal in terms of age and background. I mean, it's a love story, but it's not perhaps a classic one. And actually, it's a story about a boy learning to love his mother as much as it is about him getting together with a girl. And the relationship that he has with Zhang Mei is the catalyst which it allows him to open that side up in order to connect with his mother and also come to terms with the loss of his father. So, you know, these are universal themes that we all share, that we all experience in our lives. We experience loss and we experience love. So I hope that has a broad appeal and resonance, because we all experience that at some time. And if it's real and it moves you, then why shouldn't it appeal to all people of all ages?